And in doing so, found multiple things, and mostly how, gender is not necessarily something that's just added to surgery, but really embedded within it. And so there was kind of multiple different levels, which I talk about in the research in terms of how this is implicated. So, organizationally, women's kind of surgical status was often questioned and undermined. And this was both, in subtle ways, but also in more overt ways. So they were often seen as, less legitimate or, less competent. And sometimes even their status as, real surgeons was kind of questioned. And so this was done, in terms of, receiving less pay or not, being higher up in the surgical hierarchy, but then also, in subtle ways, just kind of, questioning their presence in the OR, or kind of more um, subtle comments in terms of questioning whether they are really, surgeons. Individually, I also found that, women surgeons kind of navigated this double bind where they had certain pressures to basically have certain attributes, I guess, that are, seen as required to be successful in surgery. So being, confident, being assertive, but they couldn't be, too assertive or too confident because then this was seen as, aggressive or unfeminine-like. And so they kind of had to navigate this, tightrope between portraying these qualities that you kind of need to in surgery, but not doing so that they're kind of seen as off-putting. And then kind of the last, I guess, level at which, gender was kind of implicated in surgery that I found was environmentally. So this was kind of implicated in how women's bodies were seen to not fit within the surgical space. So this was both, patients often being surprised to have a woman walk through the door or kind of thinking that the woman was not their surgeon, but a nurse or a student. But then also even the equipment and kind of the instrumentations that surgeons often use were made for, not really with, women often have like smaller hand sizes or they're shorter, and the equipment was not really built around women's physique. And so those were kind of the different levels that were kind of seen to be implicated with gender. And I think, first and foremost, it's really about recognizing that it's not just about the numbers. While, like I said, increasing the amount of women in surgery is super important, and we are making progress in that front. It's important to recognize that, once women are actually in surgical spaces, the structures, the tools, the expectations, haven't really changed, and they're still kind of centered around, like a male norm. And so it's really about start envisioning and redesigning the environment that kind of reflects the diversity that we want to see in surgery. And so it's about, institutions and surgical departments really looking inwards and asking, are the tools we use literally made for all types of bodies, or are they made for one specific body shape? How are pay structures being determined around different, surgeries and different surgical specialties? How are we defining a successful surgeon, and, what kind of behaviors kind of fit that, successful surgeon? And so really kind of looking inwards and kind of questioning these, structures or cultures or things that are often taken for granted, and kind of moving beyond more the individualistic approach of just increasing the numbers, but really, providing collective accountability to really change the institutions and the structures.